see this little gadget? Let's call it an iEverything. You can't get it yet, but if technology keeps moving as fast as it is now, the iEverything will be with us before you know it. A combination of intelligent computing, 3D manufacturing, big data crunching, and advanced biotechnology. This little machine will be able to do everything you want and give you everything you need. There's only one hitch. As the economy is now organized, no one will be able to buy it because there won't be any paying jobs left. You see, the iEverything will do everything. I'm exaggerating a bit in order to make a point about the trend we're already seeing. Even now, we're producing more and more with fewer and fewer people. Internet sales are on the way to replacing millions of retail workers. Diagnostic apps will be replacing hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers. Self-driving cars and trucks will replace 5 million drivers.
Where would you like to go?
Researchers estimate that almost half of all U.S. jobs are at risk of being automated in the next 2 decades. Now, this isn't necessarily bad. The economy we're heading toward could offer millions of people more free time to do what they want instead of what they have to do to earn a living. But to make this work, we'll have to figure out some way to recirculate the money from the relatively few people who do very well in the economy of the iEverything to the rest of us who will want to buy the iEverythings. One possible answer, a universal basic income, possibly financed out of the profits going to labor replacing innovations. The idea of a universal basic income historically has had support from people on both the left and the right. In the 1970s, President Nixon proposed a similar concept for the United States, and it even passed the House of Representatives.
I therefore propose that we abolish the present welfare system, and a basic federal minimum would be provided.
The idea is getting some traction again. Some think it could be superior to welfare or other kinds of public assistance because a universal basic income doesn't tell people what to spend the assistance on, and everyone qualifies. In recent years, evidence has shown that giving people cash as a way to address poverty actually works. In study after study, people don't stop working and they don't drink it away. They actually use it to increase their earnings. Interest in a basic income is surging, with governments debating it from Finland to Canada to Namibia. The charity Give Directly is about to launch a basic income pilot in Kenya, providing an income for more than 10 years to some of the poorest and most vulnerable families on the planet, and then rigorously evaluate the results. As new technologies replace work, the question for the future is how best to provide economic security for all. A universal basic income could be an answer.
Back to the big picture. One of the biggest complaints conservatives have about the American welfare system is that it's inefficient. Too many programs, they say, too many redundant programs that do the same thing while doubling the cost for taxpayers like you and me. This is the argument conservatives make time and time again when they cut vital programs that help everyday Americans get through the crushing reality of poverty. But what if there was a way to make the welfare system more efficient without slashing away at program after program? And what if it was something as simple as giving people money for free in exchange for just being living, breathing human beings? Well, believe it or not, this idea actually exists. It's called universal basic income, and our neighbors to the north, Canada, are debating giving it a try in their most populous province. With me now to talk more about Canada's plan is Jenna Van Draanen, Secretary of the Board of Directors at the Basic Income Canada Network. Jenna, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So what exactly is Ontario trying to do, and how far down the road are they?
So the Ontario government proposed 2 weeks ago in their budget to work with stakeholders, researchers, and community members to pilot a basic income project in 2016. That's all we know so far. It was committed to 2 weeks ago, and we look forward to supporting the government as they roll it out.
What are the basic guidelines of this proposed program?
Well, a lot of it remains to be seen. As you mentioned earlier, basic income is the concept that you would give everyone who needs it a minimum amount of income, regardless of their labor market participation or anything else, but just that they would be guaranteed this amount of money. The fact that it's a pilot, we can look to other pilots that have been done in the US and Canada. There were 5 of them in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So it would likely be trialed with a smaller group of people and heavily tested to see its efficacy.
Well, Alaska has been doing a variation on this for several decades, the Alaska Permanent Fund, and outside of the year that Sarah Palin ran for vice president, when I think her family made almost $40,000 from the thing because they really jacked up the payments. Typically, it's $1,000, maybe $2,000 a year for every man, woman, and child in Alaska. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about? And I'm assuming that the level of income that Alaskans are getting annually is probably in the neighborhood of what you're talking about monthly?
That's about right, yeah. The Alaska dividend is a universal demogrant model, so everybody gets it because of Alaska's resources. There are many different basic income models. We as an organization don't endorse one or another. We believe that it's up to the Canadian public and to the government to debate and to dialogue about what is most effective in Canada, but essentially it would be much more of a livable amount than currently what the individuals in Alaska get.
Is the goal of this to increase quality of life, or is it to decrease the need for welfare programs and anti-poverty programs, or both?
Well, I think you can achieve both in the same vein, actually, because basic income is a very powerful and simple idea. It does support people and allow them to live with dignity and control over their own money. It empowers them to make decisions about how to spend their, very limited income. And in doing so, it really helps people to make the choices that are best in their lives, to invest in their future, and ultimately to stimulate the economy downstream. But it also has the power of simplicity. So as you mentioned, there might be redundancy with existing income security programs. There's a lot of clawbacks. There's guidelines. There's caseworkers to enforce these guidelines. All of those things could be simplified with this one powerful idea. So I really believe it's both.
Right. So you could even pull money out of the cost of bureaucracy and simply give it to people. I mean, it gets much more straightforward. We had on this program...
And with downstream savings, too.
Right.
In health and social costs.
Yeah. I think it was about a year ago. It might have been a little longer. I don't do time very well. But we had somebody on this program from, as I recall, Switzerland, where it was actually on the ballot that everybody in Switzerland would get something that was in the neighborhood of $20,000 or $30,000 US. It got voted down, as I recall, in Switzerland, and I understand that they're going to try it again and that there are other European countries, that there's rumblings of doing this in the Netherlands. What do you know about what's going on the other side of the Atlantic, and what the probabilities of success are there?
It's hard to speak to that. I mean, definitely Switzerland had a referendum, and I think there's some people who are considering, continuing to explore the idea in Switzerland. Very powerful group of people interested in it in Finland and the Netherlands right now, and so we're part of an international network of each country has a group much like ours that is part of this international network. So we work with them closely and we support their efforts. But each country is unique and each political landscape is difficult to predict. So we wish them the best of luck in pushing this forward, and I think we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we have just a little less than a minute left. Here in the United States, Bernie Sanders has been talking about how health care should be a right, not a privilege. Pretty much everybody else is, thinking of health care as a privilege. Is there a meta to that? Is this sort of like everybody has the right to a certain basic standard of living? Is that the core moral message here?
Absolutely, and it trickles down to other human rights as well, with everybody having the right to a minimum level of income security, and we're not talking about anything luxurious, but just a minimum standard of dignity that they can have in their lives. It will have effects in guaranteed housing and education as well.
That's marvelous. Jenna Van Draanen, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And I wish you the very best.